Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another 18 Minutes with 180 Markets interview. 3.0. No, I am not talking about your grade point average in high school in the Northern Hemisphere especially. I am talking about Medicine 3.0. And what is Medicine 3.0? Medicine 3.0 is personalized medicine. That's right. We are going to enter, or we really are entering already, a golden new age of medicine where all of your treatments, your diagnostics are going to be very specific to you. And not only that, you will also have a lot more control over your records and what is happening over your body than ever before. And that's why I'm thrilled to be joined today by James Hill, who's the COO and managing director of a division within Singular Health, because Singular Health is providing so much of the diagnostics and printing that's certainly here for this Medicine 3.0 that I talked about, this revolution. And with that, James, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Greg. It's great to be on the show.
Great. Hey, James, everybody's got a story and people back people. In a couple of minutes, can you just tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. So I joined Singular Health almost 4 years ago to the day. I believe it was around the 9th of May 2019. And it's been one hell of a journey. I do not have a medical device background, but I do have a very strong background in private equity and in engineering by hobby, as I would call it. I'm a
Okay.
private pilot. I have built many electric cars and designed the software for those cars, etc. In the past, and participated in big challenges such as the World Solar Challenge. So with a varied background, I kind of got introduced to Singular Health, or MedVR as it was known, back in 2019, and working with the management and with the founders, really put together a bit of a product roadmap and dived deep into the world of medical devices, software as a medical device, and things such as ISO 13485, FDA 510K, and basically learnt it all on the job. And it's been one hell of a ride, but I think that kind of very varied background has made it quite easy to adapt to soak up all of the knowledge in the industry. And engineering is engineering. Some of the parts, some of the software that we're producing, it's really about how you apply it, and all of the kind of underlying principles are pretty much the same.
Right. Just that's really interesting. And maybe before we get, specific on Singular, can you just talk a little bit about how there is this medical device revolution that's really a global revolution, and how much, as you said, you've been at the company now for about 4 years, but a lot has changed in 4 years, hasn't it?
Oh, definitely. So when I first came along in the company, I think there's been a paradigm shift, not just over the last 4 years with COVID, with people being much more. I mean, certainly that was a driver.
Right.
COVID was a massive impediment to the company's kind of operations. We weren't able to travel outside of WA or Western Australia for a year and a half, or an island within an island. But it was certainly a very big kind of catalyst for people getting comfortable with things like teleconsults and patient health information being encrypted and sent online, rather than the traditional kind of giving you a CD and you go home, etc. Um, the couple of when I first joined the company, the software, the virtual reality headsets that we were using for MedVR, you had different base stations, you had different wires everywhere, and now you can buy a $499 Oculus Quest 2 from Amazon. Arrives at the surgeon's doorstep, they install the software, it's fully wireless. It's just a complete paradigm shift in the compute power, in the how available the technology is for people. And then really we've seen, and it's something that's become more ubiquitous. So in complex surgeries like craniomaxillofacial, so like when
Right.
they replace part of your jawbone or they move your jaw forward. They've been using personalized surgical guides for 15, 20 years. Obviously, it comes at great expense, and 3D printing has, really made that much more accessible. And as technology, the software, the 3D printing side, makes it a little bit easier to design these kind of patient-specific solutions. It certainly has made it much easier to apply it to different parts of the body. So one of these, oral surgeries is probably $70,000, $80,000. And so it's worth doing a patient-specific guide. Now we're doing,
Right.
custom check sockets for people who have gone through an amputation and they need to have the socket adapted for their specific purpose. And that's not a $70,000, operation in of itself. And yet, because the technology such as 3D printing to produce this custom part that's all molded to the shape of the patient's leg,
Right.
you can start to apply it to those higher volume, lower value surgeries, but also
Right.
while still having the really high value kind of lower volume surgeries as well.
Wow, James, and that's really incredible. And now turning, I guess, to singular, you mentioned the word encrypted before there, 3DICOM, 3DICOM. Maybe explain to you, how does that fit into your business?
Sure. So first I'll explain the name because I always, it's 3DICOM, 3DICOM, 3D-ICOM. The DICOM is digital imaging and communication in medicine. It's a worldwide file format. So every ultrasound, CT, MRI, X-ray, all of those different imaging types around the world, whether you're in regional Papua New Guinea, whether you're in Tanzania or you're right here in Perth, Western Australia, they all use this standard worldwide file format.
Okay.
So DICOM is that medical imaging file format, and we're able to take images from a standard CT image, and then basically normally you would view it in 2D. So this is your 2D representation
Right.
scrolling through. And what we do is on the actual device itself, we turn it into a 3D representation.
Wow.
So it's possible, just changing the brightness there, it's totally possible to turn this into a meaningful 3D representation right there on the patient's device or for the doctor themselves. So
Wow.
this takes kind of 2D images and converts it into a 3D representation. From there, for your everyday patient, it's really empowers them to actually understand more about their anatomy. We're not trained to see things in 2D representation. We're
Right.
trained to see things in 3D. And so for a patient, they'll better understand their anatomy, they'll better understand what the issue is and how to manage it. And that's huge. In the US, in the last 5 years, they've passed a number of federal acts requiring physicians to give patients access to their medical data. And we've built ways that the doctor can transfer that file from their computer to a patient's phone simply through scanning a QR code. So you scan a QR code, the patient sets up a 3DICOM account, and that file sits there on the app ready for them to view through their family and actually better understand their health. And in the US, in the space of 2 years, we received our FDA 510K clearance. So we've got a diagnostically approved piece of medical software that allows them to measure the scan in 2D, see the measurements in 3D, turn that file around, really discuss that as well. And even that goes well beyond what's currently present. So we're screen sharing at the moment or
Right.
having a Zoom call. And rather than do, lots of different systems over the top, we've integrated voice and text chat into the software to allow you and I from different parts of the world to collaboratively turn that 3D model at the same time and discuss a surgical case, either with the patient present or in a kind of multidisciplinary team for diagnostic purposes.
Wow. This is incredible. So really, number one, just seeing it visually, how simple it was that literally you pick up your mobile phone and bang, away you go. And can I ask you also from a practical point of view, because even having that diagnostic, I must confess, someone like me, if I saw my head rotating around, I really wouldn't know much
Yeah.
further other than that. But what it does lead me to is, can you really then consult with a doctor that maybe around the world, literally, you can get a maybe a better set of opinions, especially if you have a complicated type of potential procedure coming up?
Yeah, that's correct. So what the doctor can do is we certainly don't allow them to share things like measurements with the patients. It's
Okay.
not an idea, sometimes there's particular information that, you know, patients, don't really need to be privy to, that
Most of them
heightens
probably.
anxiety rather than lessens it. But there's different ability for the doctor to actually annotate the scan. There's also a possibility while they're doing the consult and they're talking to the patient for them to do screen recordings of the software, and that can also be shared to the patient. So rather than a patient, who goes into a consult and they get told that they need to have this, shoulder surgery, and they go home and they get the typical barrage of questions, what's happening, what exactly, and they remember 20% of the conversation. They can actually
Sure.
play that back. And it's up to the doctor to be able to actually determine what they do and don't want to share with the patient. So they can screen record, they can share different images, and certainly once you've got that file shared to you, there is the ability to much easier send it off for a second opinion. Now, in the past, that was possible, but you would be burning CDs, you would be getting a CD from one
Yes.
hospital and taking it to the next, or literally putting it into a FedEx parcel and sending it off to another practitioner. And this is all now HIPAA compliant, fully encrypted. We send it over the cloud. It's stored only for a couple of days, and then the other party gets to receive it, decrypt it, view it, and give their opinion as well.
Right. And James, this is a global industry called medicine anatomy. And you mentioned that it is FDA approved. Is that correct? I just want to
That's
hear where the
correct. Yeah.
approvals are. And then what's with the TGA at this point?
Yeah. So there's obviously, the medical market, as we would all hope, is highly regulated. And I suppose, since our IPO back in February 2021, we've made huge strides. We've achieved ISO 13485, which is a global standard required for regulatory approvals. And we've also applied for our 510K and subsequently been granted that. So we now have the ability to sell this as a diagnostic product in the US. We are going through now approval processes with Health Canada first, and then we can use the FDA combined with Health Canada to bring it back into Australia with much less red tape than compared to going straight to the TGA themselves. So there's a little bit of a pathway,
Right.
but ultimately it's done strategically to reduce red tape, reduce cost, and ultimately time as well. Yeah.
And let's face it, also just as shareholders here, you're currently approved in a market with circa 330 million people. Here in Australia, we have a circa 25 million people.
Yeah.
We can't certainly say that we don't have a plenty to chew on, so to speak, at this point in time. And that's, I guess, leads me to the go-to-market strategy, especially in the States. Can you just discuss it a little bit?
Yeah. So I suppose with the United States, it's been a very interesting journey. We got our FDA 510K. So with COVID restrictions, not being able to travel out of the state, if we rewind a little bit, um, effectively February last year, there was uncertainty about being able to get back into WA, and I jetted off to the East Coast and then went and actually set up our ISO 13485 standard or system with a consultant in the Netherlands. It was actually cheaper, more expeditious, and being a software company, whatever I did over there, came back through the ether to our office in
Right.
Perth. So that was much easier than actually trying to bring a quality consultant into Western Australia at that
Right.
point in time. I then spent a lot of time in the US, going to a number of trade shows and making a lot of networking events over there, which was quite it's slow going to begin with, and then these things kind of snowball very quickly. So we got our FDA 510(k) in October, late October last year. Um, we subsequently set up our US regulatory agent through a custom cranial implant company called Millennium in Connecticut. And we've appointed CG1, which is a veteran-led company based in Miami, as our first US sales agent or partner. So we have a global partner program where we have appointed a number of different partners in China, Macau,
Sure.
Switzerland, US, etc., to represent Singular and sell the product. In the US, I can't really speak to it too much, but I certainly think that for us, there's a real possibility of being able to replicate the recent success of 4D Medical. We have gone very much down the same pathway of looking at various government agencies who have expressed interest in the product. Can't go any further than that.
Yep.
And certainly there's a number of university-led health systems in the US who see both the teaching applications of this product, of the software. I mean, from a teaching perspective, you essentially get virtual cadavers with hundreds of real cases. You're not
Right.
training on a mock-up model. You're actually training on a 3D model of a real patient's body. So there's a lot of teaching universities, like teaching hospitals and
Teaching
university-led
hospitals.
health systems in the US who have a very strong interest in the product. And that's opportunities that we're chasing very hard right now. So really where we see the go-to-market strategy is very much in enterprise-led sales.
Right. And for those of you that don't know, teaching hospitals in the US are oftentimes the leading thought leaders. They are huge, enormous institutions. And frankly, you could have an incredible business just servicing those hospitals alone. That certainly wouldn't be an issue. And then just talking about as shareholders again, how do we get paid? How do we make money? It's a SaaS model. Is that how it works?
Correct. Yeah. So the way that we've positioned it at present is that it's a enterprise grade SaaS model. So you're looking for individual consumers, the ability to go month to month, and then for those larger enterprise customers, we have annual subscriptions, which can be extended or bundled into a larger contract, so a multi-year contract. And we also have a number of add-ons as well that we're working on. So areas to increase that average revenue per user, such as scan sharing, cloud storage, AI models in the cloud that they could actually leverage. So there's a number of other areas that sit around the outside that certainly add value to that kind of medical imaging ecosystem per se.
Got it. And speaking of add-ons, James, Singular Health, it's a lot more than just 3DICOM or DCOM or whatever you want to call it there. You also have a 3D printing business, I believe. Can you speak of that a little bit?
Sure. Yes. I mean, once you go from 2D to 3D on a computer screen, the next iteration or the next step is to turn that model into something that you can actually hold in your hand. So we have invested in a 3D printing facility about 20 kilometers south of Perth. It's a very well-established facility. They've got a great brand name, great brand equity, and a really good team as well. And that facility is really around medical 3D printing. So there is an industrial 3D printing element to it. You're not bound to just doing medical devices. But certainly we've now branched out into the kind of area of doing patient specific. So everything we do is patient specific, whether it's looking at medical images on a computer screen or producing parts. We're not just doing off the shelf, one size fits all. Everything is specific to the patient. And so, for example, this is a prosthetic check socket for an amputee. It's an ability to actually check the fit on the remaining the residual limb before they produce the prosthetic. And that this here is around about a $700 part, and yet we can print about 20 of them on a machine at once in a single run, and the gross margin is quite significant on that. We also have TGA clearances. Sorry. So in Australia, we've already gone through and gotten TGA clearances for these kind of class 1 medical devices. So we have a TGA clearance for this check socket and a TGA clearance for this ankle foot orthoses. There's about 100,000 of these made per year in Australia, and it's about $450 for one of these. So it's all custom to the patient's foot. It's used when you're recovering from a sports injury, or if you've got cerebral palsy or other areas that need gait correction.
Understood. And so, James, you have a lot going on your plate. Singular has so many different ways to win. Over the next 6 to 12 months, can you just tell us what would be your idea of success? What are the big catalysts that we should be looking for?
Sure. I suppose in an ideal world,
Yes.
Greg, I think we'll be targeting much greater exposure in the United States. So looking at larger scale distribution agreements, potential contracts with either government agencies or hospital systems, collectively. We also have a number of exciting opportunities in Southeast Asia from that enterprise software sale aspect. And then from the 3D printing side, we are looking to add more products to the product range. We've got online ordering capabilities, and I really believe that we can scale the 3D printing side of the business. As I said, there's 100,000 of these approximately made each year in Australia, and at $450 each, that's a significant amount of revenue, a very large target market. And it's also a great way of scaling, because there might be 100,000 of these made per year, but there's roughly only about 60 clinics that people go through because it's so specialist. So it's a very clear go-to-market strategy of going to those 60 clinics, convincing them of the benefits of the custom-made ankle foot orthotic, and then pushing it out that way. And finally, I think over the next 6 to 12 months, we also have a couple of resellerships for industrial 3D printer manufacturers, some of the world-leading brands such as 3D Systems and Dimension. And we've got a very strong sales pipeline of engineering firms and other medical device manufacturers around Australia who are got significant interest in actually expanding their own capabilities, or joining forces with us to buy millions of dollars worth of equipment and really scale that out. So there's a couple of different revenue streams, from the enterprise software to the 3D printing bureau for medical devices, and finally the industrial 3D printing side.
Right. Hey, James, unfortunately, we have to keep these interviews short. We've already gone over a little bit here, but there was just no way, and I had a feeling about this, that you could talk about Singular Health in such a short amount of time anyway. James, thank you so much, number one. Number two, again, it just sounds like it's an incredibly exciting period of time, and we feel like you're on the right trend. You have so many different ways to win. Please keep us up, and we look forward to hearing from you again.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for having me on the show.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching another episode of 18 Minutes with 180 Markets. And don't forget, if you want access to thousands of capital raises, sign up at 180markets.com.au and you'll get access to our very next capital raise. Thanks for watching.